Abstract Transmissions.
Welcome to Abstract Transmissions. I am Rad Jess. We have Cuffy Proctor with us here today. And we have an extra special guest, Jaydi Samuels Kuba. She is a writer. She's written for Family Guy, The Jellies, Salem, The Beach Buds, and she is an LA matchmaker. Like, how cool is that? So thank you, Jaydi, for coming on with us today. I really appreciate it. And can you tell us a little about, I want to talk about the matchmaking first, because I think that's one of the most interesting things I've seen anyone do in Hollywood. And I just want to know more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, every meeting I walk into for anything writing related, all everyone wants to talk about is matchmaking. So this is very appropriate.
Yeah.
What would you like to know? I've been doing it for 7 years professionally, and I could literally talk for the hour and a half about it. So I don't know if you have any specific questions. I could tell you how I got into it.
Yeah. Let's hear how you got into it, because I think that's where we start, right? Let's go back to the beginning. How did we get into this?
Yeah,
and it's all new to me, so I'm fascinated. This is
matchmaking in general, or just my version?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole thing. But
yeah, matchmaking in general. Because did this start before LA?
No, yes and no. I've always considered myself very much like a connector of people. And so that's always taken on various forms, whether it's helping someone find a roommate or, oh, you're a great writer, let me hook you up with an agent. And so the dating side of things took off more in college. I was always just a wing woman to my friends. I was never shy. I was very, very shy with my own love life. But if I, was out at a bar with a bunch of friends, I would have no problems walking up to a guy and basically like hitting on him, but for my friend. And so that just became something that I did very naturally and got a good reputation for doing. And when you set up friends though, when you're trying to like connect people for dating within your own circle of friends, it gets really incestuous very quickly. So in my head, I had always sort of dreamed about doing an umbrella of a company so that once I spread the word about what I was doing, people could start sending me quality singles, and then I would have essentially like a bigger pool of people to work with. And I've realized through all of this, I think to be a matchmaker, you have to have like a fairly controlling personality. I think the same skills I use with what I'm describing about like, oh, this person belongs with this person and having like a bigger pool to work with is exactly why I loved being captain of my kickball team years ago. Where you're like, oh, let's wrangle a bunch of people and figure out who's good for what position. And it scratches a lot of itches of mine. And I love. And so I finally went ahead and pulled the trigger on the matchmaking company when I was working for Seth over at Family Guy. He had no idea, of course, at the time, but I just found myself totally bewildered by the fact that there were so many amazing women in particular who worked at this company. I mean, we're talking like 150 employees between Family Guy, there was American Dad, The Cleveland Show. They did the animation, of course, like over in Korea. And so there's just the network of people I was meeting through work was huge. And it was becoming a regular thing where I would encounter this like amazing woman in her late 30s or early 40s who just wasn't settled down, didn't have children, but clearly wanted those things. And I thought, okay, if I finally pull the trigger and start this matchmaking company like I've always wanted to, I can have, much bigger pool of people to work with. I could find all these amazing women I work with, great dates. And so it all kind of spiraled from there.
So did you ever matchmake for Seth MacFarlane?
Everybody asks me that.
Yes.
No, I didn't. Honestly, like he didn't really need help in that department. I definitely had women I would meet who I'd be like, oh, she'd be so great for him. And, would occasionally be in his ear at a party, like hoping for things. But I was pretty good about keeping the professional and social things separate. That was something that's always been very important to me in general. Like even now with the company, we have so many people who become clients who I meet in general meetings, or I'm pitching a show, and somehow this just happened earlier this week. Suddenly, like that turns into that executive is now a client of mine for the matchmaking company. And I'm very, very careful about, this is why it's great having a business partner. My business partner becomes point for their matches, which allows me to really keep everything separate.
Oh, that's a really great point. So, have you ever found that have you ever been put in a situation where you feel like there's a conflict and you just want to like back out from it? Or has that you've been so careful that you've never had to have that happen?
Oh, I wish that were the case. Everything when you're starting anything, it's a learning curve. And so this was something I definitely had to learn. And there are definitely certain executives at certain companies where, it's just an unspoken thing where we both know that either I didn't match them successfully or they were offended by an introduction, that I made for them. And, after doing that a couple times, it was like, okay, maybe I need to rethink my approach on this. And my intent is always super pure, and I really want to I think so highly of the people I work with, and I get so invested in their respective journeys. So my heart's always in the right place, but sometimes you're off a little bit, or it takes time to get to know someone or what they're looking for. And so now having my business partner has really helped me kind of pass those people off to her. And it's like, okay, so she could offend them and it's not going to affect me trying to sell a show to Netflix or something one day.
So one other question I have here is when I was it's kind of more of like a story kind of thing here, but when I was reading, I think it was your website for the matchmaking, which by the way, what is your website?
It's ljmatchmaking.com.
I think I saw a story on there about you and your husband, like you were trying to match your husband and then like it kind of rolled into something more.
So to clarify, I was trying to match him before he was my husband.
Yes.
So like that could be so easily misconstrued. There was this amazing young woman, Liz, who we had set up a few times, and she liked the caliber of people she was meeting through our company. And she ended up referring my husband, Dave, and she had said to him, the big selling point for guys with our company, and I could launch into a whole explanation from a feminist standpoint of why we do it this way, which I'm sure we'll get into because I know we have the time. But yeah, we don't charge straight guys to use our service. And so part of that is because, and I'll circle back to my husband, but part of that is because we found at the beginning when we started charging different levels for different people, single women in LA were like, oh, I totally get it. It's tough out there. Here's my money, please help me. And the guys, like even just charging a little bit, all of a sudden the like good looking, successful guys that I know the women I was working with would be interested in meeting were like, oh, I don't need your help. Why would I pay you anything? And so we started charging just the women, but in doing so have found that, with a lot of other companies, the women are in a complementary pool waiting to get plucked out by the paying members that are often these like wealthy men who are seeking those women, but the women aren't looking for them back. So I have found that in doing this, the women are actually our clients, and we're trying to make mutual matches, but we're working even more closely with the women who are paying us to do so. And also the men treat on dates. I mean, if they're gentlemen, hopefully they're doing it anyway, but in doing it, the men are investing in the women are investing in the guys, and just in terms of our straight population. And so with Dave, my husband, see, I told you I'd get back to it.
Yes.
He was like, great, I don't have to pay, sign me up. And so I ended up meeting him with my business partner. And at the time I was actually in another relationship, and I was thinking of him as like, oh, this amazing match for some clients, not even thinking about myself, because at the time, when I'm with someone, it's just very much tunnel vision. And so, but I did think he was this awesome guy, and I was really excited to work with him. We ended up setting him up on a total of 5 dates, and he wasn't really feeling it, and he's a little bit flirty in his emails. And I ended up this is another time where I passed him off to Lauren. I was like, yeah, I'm with someone, like, you can't really be calling me cute, I'm your matchmaker. And so I ended up passing him off, and she set him up a couple more times, and it was 5 matches total. And then I had become single a year and a half into working with him, and he just like kept creeping into my head. And so a friend of mine calls it getting high on my own supply. I basically reached out to him, asked him out on a date, and the rest is history. And it's truly the only time I've ever done that.
Well, now, was he already feeling it for you? Like he kind of knew that these other matches that you were making for him really weren't going to work out because he already had that connection with you. He just knew ahead of time.
No, I mean, that sounds so romantic. I wish I could say that were the case. He definitely, like, as he had sort of, I mean, the specific story is he had said to me, because he was getting very self-conscious that he was rejecting all of the matches that I was
Oh.
putting his way. So he sent this email sort of defending himself, even though he didn't need to say, like, I swear, like, I'm not that picky. I'm just looking for someone little and cute like you. He's like, take you, for example, not to say that you're not that cute because I'm not that picky. Like, he was rambling. It didn't make any sense, but it was adorable. And that was the email where I was like, okay, I'm going to pass you off to my business partner. And so I knew he thought I was cute, but I mean, there's a lot of people in the world who we look at as like, oh, that person's attractive. And so it wasn't like him thinking I was cute was preventing him from meeting another cute girl, you know? So,
Right.
so yeah, in that sense, no. But I did know in the back of my mind, like, oh, that one client, like, you know, maybe would be open to it one day. But it really wasn't something I was actively thinking about until I became single. And then, you know, that thought kept creeping in my head, like, all right, well, I think he's cute too. Like, why not go for it? And of course, there was a lot more to it. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the things I do want to touch upon is, you know, like the feminist aspect of it that you just talked about, where like you don't charge the men, but you charge the women. I'm wondering, in a place like LA where it's extremely progressive, has that ever come up as a topic of anybody who is very feminist? Because from what you've just described to me, like it makes sense. I completely understand where you're coming from. And I think that that business model is exactly what women are looking for when they're in a situation of, I just need a little bit of help, but I don't want to go through the Bumble or the eHarmony or the emails, that, you know, the constant barrage of emails or the quiz.
So is your question just whether or not what makes it more feminist?
No, like if anybody's ever, I guess, has it ever made anybody, I guess, maybe offended? Has it ever offended anybody? I guess maybe that's my question.
There's definitely people that at the beginning, without really knowing the explanation behind it, where their initial response is, whoa, what do you mean you charge women and not men? But typically once I explain to them
Mhm.
the reasoning behind it, most people seem super on board. And if they're not, I do date coaching and consulting for other companies as well. So there's other companies I work with that have different models that just charge everyone, and it works for them. For us, we just found that this is the way to get the highest quality men and women. And since that's what the clients we're working with are seeking, we've just modified our business accordingly.
So is it like numbers kind of ratio? I guess that would be my question. Is there a higher ratio of men than there is women in that specific, I guess, say demographic or
Yeah,
area?
no, that's a good question. You would think that there's just a bajillion eligible bachelors because we don't charge them, but we're a referral only company. And the way that we work, I think women are more likely to refer their girlfriends than if a guy has a really, like, for example, a couple that just got married and had a baby through our company. We receive so many more referrals from her than from him because guys are
Mm.
less likely, and I'm gender stereotyping, so I apologize to anyone that's offended by that, but typically, at least the guys we work with are less likely to tell their buddies, like, yeah, I know this great matchmaker, like, you should work with her. So I think for that reason, even though
Accurate. That's
yeah,
accurate.
so
I mean, not to stereotype, but you're right. I mean, and that this goes into stereotype, I guess, in a negative for a lot of even married men. I was married for 10 years, and it's you're not thoughtful about those. You're not always thinking about those things on the front of your mind. And I don't think it's just a guy thing, but I think that a lot of times you'll see that with guys that are working all the time and they're not thinking of things. So their friends, they're not going to think, be really great for Bill. I think I'm going to reach out and get a match. give them a good match. Guys aren't always thinking about that stuff, whereas they're gonna be like, oh, let's go to the bar and get them hooked up, or, I don't know. I've never done the wingman thing, so I can't really, see it from that perspective. I guess that would be, I don't see a lot of guys going, oh, let's get him. Let's get matched up on a blind date. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a blind date. Obviously, you guys have a process, but
I agree with you in terms of the likelihood, of men versus women typically referring friends to a matchmaker. That being said, we still have like hundreds of guys at a time that we work with. Really? So because our business model, it is, we still call it a side hustle, but we basically do it full time on top of our other. Lauren works in unscripted. She produces also on the scripted side as well. And also, I write television. And so for us, those are our primary sources of income, which allows us to be very flexible with the business model. And so even though we charge women, like our rates are more equivalent to paying upfront for a year of Match.com than a typical matchmaker, which in LA packages go anywhere from like $1,500 to $10,000.
Wow. Oh my God.
And that's, I mean, that's huge though. I mean, I will say, just because now after, I was married for a long time, unfortunately, lost my wife. I'm now, after 2 years of just kind of getting through a lot of that, considering dating, and it's just like, everything's changed so much now. 10 years, a lot has happened. The whole swiping left and right thing, which is what everyone's doing now, just to even like meet people. Like nobody's going out to bars anymore. Like I'm completely in an alien and, environment, I guess, when it comes to just the overall major changes. What it means to date now in 2021 is just vastly different than 2008, 2009,
Plus having a global pandemic on top of all of that.
Yeah.
That much hard.
Definitely.
So how has the pandemic been during this matchmaking process? Because I can only imagine that, like, even though there's been a pandemic, like people who were single and maybe even living alone, maybe at that point they realized like more than ever that they needed that companionship that they didn't previously think they needed.
Yeah, this again was something that was a learning curve for us. And of course, everyone in the industry, no one has had to navigate a global pandemic yet. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was definitely an experimental phase for our company. And the matchmaking community in LA is very small. So, we would also get together to sort of see what everyone else was doing. And in terms of trends, first of all, definitely way more signups in a consolidated period of time than usual, because all of a sudden, like you said, you're by yourself, and this isn't true for everyone, but largely speaking, if you're alone and you have a tendency to get a little lonely, like of course, during a global pandemic, when you can have no physical contact with anyone, it's going to be exacerbated. So we definitely got more referrals than ever, at least toward the beginning of COVID. And then it kind of went in waves, but we saw relationships, I think everything just moved at a quicker speed. We know someone who got engaged in a very short period of time. There were couples that moved in together in very short periods of time. And then some of them just, it fizzled out just as quickly because spending so much time together, it's kind of like when you watch The Bachelor, you're like, how could people get engaged after only knowing each other for a few weeks? It's like, but you're in this consolidated bubble where there's only a focus on your dating life. And so I think it was kind of the same at the beginning of the pandemic. And then of course, before the Delta variant, there was this huge surge of like, oh my gosh, we can all go out to bars now and hook up. And no one wanted to focus on relationships. They just wanted to hook up with as many people as possible. And now it's kind of, with the Delta variant, it's looking more like the beginning of the pandemic. And so it has been really, really interesting to see. And we did also do this experimental phase called wildcard virtual dating, where we offered like at a really discounted rate, sign up with us for 3 months, and we will just send you like randomized dates within your age range. And we weren't, when someone works with us normally, it's highly, highly curated. We're like, okay, what's the age range you're interested in? Religious background. Like we get very, very detailed about what someone's looking for in a partner. And for this, we were like, this is a great opportunity to throw a bunch of wild card matches at people because we don't typically do that. And with virtual dating, it's like, hey, like no harm, no foul. It's not like anyone is, out a ton of money for a 5-course meal. It's like an hour, meet someone maybe a little outside your comfort zone. And we did have some really interesting connections that came from that. But yeah, as everything continued on, we ended up moving back into our more focused, curated version of what we were doing, just because we, ultimately had more success with that.
Did you ever? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. I had wrote it down. I've been using the paper a
Good.
lot lately. It's been good.
But you go ahead.
Things like, say you used eHarmony, for example, earlier, or, I'll say Tinder. I think Jess said Bumble. I have no idea. It's so damn confusing to me now, because eHarmony was all that existed. I'm pretty sure. I don't know, because I didn't use it back then because it was different. Like I met people like when I played out with my bands, like that's just natural environment things. That's how it worked for my entire life. So the whole digital, or just even, talking to somebody else about my dating, that's all so completely alien to me. My question, I guess, is do you really, it seems like to me that there's a sway towards, not this intricate knowledge of the other person, or it's frustrating to me because it seems like everybody's like, oh, we want honesty, trust, communication, which all sounds great, right? But then when you're direct, or you're honest, and you're very straightforward, that doesn't necessarily work. But at the same time, I think the digital break, right? It's just getting to the point where you can actually even send them a message and they know what you sound like. They know, that you're not insane, getting that barrier, initially, I think can be challenging for people depending on what method they're using. Like I'm not really, Tinder is incredibly daunting. So it's like, no. And then eHarmony is like sitting down and writing a bunch of stuff out. So I just throw in the towel at this point. Like, so my question, I guess, looking at it from that perspective, are people leaning towards the meaningful, like intricate checklists, or not necessarily saying that that's how it works, but the introspective, personality type questions, things like that? Or are they just, is it fucking swipe left fuck fest? Like what is going, like, I am so completely lost because it seems like it's the latter, to be completely honest with you.
Sure. I mean,
which is shitty as a parent.
What are people doing and what should people be doing? I think different things. So, I would say, because of the overwhelming number of options on so many different dating apps, it's so superficial for the most part. Why land on someone's photo that you're not super excited about when you could just swipe and get more excited about the next person? So there's definitely, with a lot of the date and relationship clients that I work with, because I do coaching as well, I do encourage people to spend more time on whether it's filling out their profile or perusing other people's information, so it's not so superficial. We all know chemistry is really important in making a connection with someone, but then there has to be so much more, right? So it's totally fine if you're not feeling someone's photo to go to the next picture. What I'm not a big fan of is just swiping the right way on someone, matching with someone when you don't know anything else about them. Because what I would say, most people I know who are doing the online dating, they're matching with people first, and only after someone else matches with them do they take the time to see, okay, are they actually a good fit? And then they use your profile. And so
I feel like that's why I'm not getting anywhere, because that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at each and every single one. And to me, I'm looking at it totally from a metric standpoint. I'm a numbers guy. It's going to be a probability factor that there's just going to be a lot more guys just blasting through. And I hate to generalize, but it is definitely, it's a stereotype for a reason. Like I know friends that literally do just that. They're just like, yep, I would, nope, yep, nope. And they just the whole way. I'm like, how do you know? You could talk to him in the first 5 minutes, at least that's it doesn't matter. Physical attraction is great and all, but like if I can have a conversation with somebody.
So you're looking for something more intellectual.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Do you find that in LA that's very common that they want that intellectual connection? Or do you think that because so I live in Maine, Mark lives in New Hampshire, and so for our area it's very, very different from LA.
I mean, at the end of the day,
yeah,
I think
very.
you're always it's definitely very different. Like I do give you that, but at the end of the day, people are really looking to connect on the same levels. I think to have a long-term connection with someone, you want to be physically connected to them, you want to have a strong emotional connection, and you want a strong intellectual connection. And there are a lot of people that end up with someone where they're not fulfilled in one of those areas. And that's oftentimes when you see it not work out in the long run. And so even if someone's not actively seeking an intellectual connection, chances are if they're in a long-lasting relationship, that probably does exist on some level. But whether or not people are actively seeking that, honestly, even with the people I work with out in LA, I would say intelligence is one of the top things that people request, and Mark, in terms of the swiping culture, I mean, that's why it's so great working with a matchmaker. You could tell someone, here are all the qualities I'm looking for. Here's what I'm typically attracted to. And instead of you sitting there, you can supplement your dating life by doing online dating. But instead of feeling the pressure of having to like constantly swipe during all of your free time, the matchmaker is basically doing it for you. Like we're meeting thousands of eligible bachelors and bachelorettes. And so we're looking at all of them from everyone else's perspective and only like flagging the ones that sound like they could be good fits for Mark. And then we present them to you and you see if you have a connection with them, but you didn't have to do all of that grunt work yourself.
Why wouldn't everybody do that? That just seems like an exponentially easier way to do things. Like honestly, I have literally no time. All my time is given to my kid. Like, and then some, and then whatever I have left over is this and music. So it's like making that balance. There's no time for writing out intricate messages that are never going to get responded to. And then that's it too. I get ADHD. So if I write something and I feel like any type of connection, it's going to be a big, rant, which that's not a good thing. Don't do that.
I'm biased, of course, but I think everyone should have a matchmaker. If you're single and looking for something long-term, assuming it's a good matchmaker, I think everyone should have a therapist. Like these are all like wonderful things, but
absolutely.
Everything costs money and people have priorities. And we are like LJM is really the exception with the business model we have. It's very, very affordable. Most matchmakers are charging like in the thousands. And so they offer an amazing service. And that's not to say that people shouldn't seek them out as well. Their business model is just a little bit different, but it does sometimes, it can be harder for people to afford.
Very much so. I mean, I'm lucky. Like I met my husband when I was 20 at work. My husband's 9 years older than me.
Natural environment. Yes.
Yeah. My husband's 9 years older than me. He was married at the time, but going through a divorce. And I was with my ex-boyfriend in an open relationship and left my boyfriend for my husband. So, but that's 20. I was 20 years old though. Like, what kind of maturity level was I at in general? And I feel like with them, if I were to be single right now, I don't know how I would handle it without a matchmaker. I don't know how I would do it.
Yeah, I didn't know that matchmakers existed until like now. Sorry, but I didn't. I just didn't know it was like a thing. I mean, I've heard it, right? But like, I don't know. Sorry. I mean to talk over
you. I think you're in the majority.
Especially for males too, because so I know that you said that you're a referral service, but for the males you have coming in, have you ever like just met someone in general and then said like, hey, like, I run this matchmaking service and would this be something you'd be interested in? We don't charge the males because we're looking for this, we're trying to improve the dating pool for the women.
Yeah, I mean, so it's referral only with the exception of if myself or my business partner invites you to join. So we don't actively recruit. Like we never go out with the intention of getting new bachelors or bachelorettes. But if we happen to be out in a setting that, is safe, like a networking event or a social gathering with mutual contacts, it does come up in conversation. Sometimes, if we think someone's awesome, we might suggest that they sit down with us to see if we know anyone that fits what they're looking for. At the beginning, when we first started, we did try actively recruiting. It was kind of a disaster. I mean, we would like hang out. You won't know some of the references I'm making to places in LA, so I won't be specific, but we would go to certain areas where we knew people like to hang out, and we would just approach random people with business cards and we'd tell them about our service. And truly, like, not only did it not result in a lot of people following up with us, but the people that did, there was no level of accountability. We didn't know anything about them. It's a scary thing, to introduce a client that we care about to someone who they could have found themselves on Tinder. So we just ended up moving away from that. And it took longer for our business to grow because of that. But I love the men and women we work with now. And I know that when I'm sending someone up on a date with someone, maybe it's not going to be an amazing lifelong connection, but at least I know they're going to be safe, and a quality person that hopefully they have a great conversation with, even if it doesn't lead to romance.
So I do have like a question. So one of the ways that I found you, and so I want to like transition a little bit into talking about writing. One of the ways that I found you was I don't remember what I was doing, but I found you on like Instagram or whatever. And then I messaged you and I was like, hey, does your matchmaking extend to voice actors and producers or like, casting directors? And so then we just started chatting from there. And then that's how this interview started. So one of the things that I had done when I found out that you were a writer was that I think you worked on like Salem, right? And so personal note here, like my however many great grandmother, I'm directly descended from Rebecca Nurse. So Salem has always been kind of like a thing that I enjoy learning about and seeing TV shows on and whatnot. How did you get to work on Salem? And then what was that experience like? Because I don't think people around here in our area, they don't understand that when you're a writer, it's not like a freelance free for all. Like you're working with other people and you have to be able to follow someone else's internal monologue and be able to mimic in a little bit of a way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why, when you're trying to get a writing job, you can write an original pilot, which really shows off your own voice. Or back in the day, it was more common to write spec scripts, like an example of an existing episode of a TV show, which shows, oh, hey, I can take on the voice of any other creator. And so with TV writing, you definitely want to have both skills, and they are a little bit different. But in terms of how I got the job on Salem, so it's kind of a random connection. I, at the time, was Seth MacFarlane's assistant. So around when I was like starting this whole matchmaking thing also on the side, I had just written an episode of Family Guy, but they take a year to get animated. And so during that time, I was still his assistant and I was still looking for other writing jobs because they were fully staffed at Family Guy. So I was like, okay, I've done my episode. I did this freelance episode and I want, to be staffed full time somewhere. So I was actively like talking to people, trying to make connections. And Seth was in post-production on the first Ted movie, which we shot in Boston, but was getting edited in Los Angeles. And at the time, he was in pre-production on the first season of Cosmos. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah, so great show. And
awesome show.
Amazing, right? And so they were in development on that. And he wanted everything under, this is before he had his own office building. He wanted everything. And when I say own office building, I mean separate from Family Guy, just his whole production company. So right across from Family Guy, he ended up renting out this building that had people from people from Cosmos, people from TED. I was his assistant across everything.
Oh my God, did you meet Andrew?
I did. She's so
Oh
lovely.
my God. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I
I
am.
am total nerd fanboy when it comes to her and Carl Sagan. Obviously, both
Oh,
of them
as
were
you should.
fantastic people and incredibly intelligent, amazing thinkers. So
That's so nice.
yeah, that's wicked cool.
Yeah. So Anne was actually working in that building almost every day. And on top of that, Brandon Braga, who co-created Salem, he was directing Cosmos at the time. So
Oh.
talk about everything sort of like
Cool.
coming
That
together.
is so awesome.
Yeah, so we were all under the same roof. A lot of us would go to lunch together every day. And during one of these lunches, it came up that Brandon had just finished a draft of, at the time, I think it was called Malice. This was before Salem was even shot. And I really, really wanted to read it. I'm a fan of Brandon's work. I think he's such a great, talented writer. And so I had asked him if I could read it. And being like the awesome, kind person he is, he was like, if you have anything you want me to read and give feedback on, send it my way.
Oh.
So, yeah. So at the time, I had sent him something. I don't even remember right now what it was. But I'll come back to that. And then I had read Malice and I gave him notes on not notes, but like, it's Brandon, like who am I to give Brandon notes? But I gave him some thoughts, I really liked it. And he asked if there, if I had any comments, and I don't remember what it was at the time, but like I had given him some feedback. Now, 3 years later, he approached me and remembered some of the thoughts I had from the first season before it even aired. And between that, the rapport that I had with him from working with him on some of these shows, and now knowing that I had written this episode of Family Guy, he said, we're staffing up for Salem season 3. By any chance, do you also write drama? And you'd have to be a crazy person to say, no, I only write animated comedy, right? I was like, of course, I also
Seriously,
write drama.
that's so awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, oh yeah. And he said, do you have a writing sample you could send my way? I was like, of course. So that's not to say at the time I didn't write drama. It's just I had been so focused on getting staffed in comedy because I had been working for Seth that my dramatic aspirations had sort of been set to the side. And so a little backstory, I was a screenwriting major at USC. So I actually was at the time writing even more dramas than comedies, but like I said, had shifted my focus. So I was like, yeah, I write it, like, no problem. I'll send you something tomorrow. And in the meantime, had no fresh drama samples. Like, I think the closest thing I had was an episode of House MD, which made no sense for Salem.
Oh,
so I ended up like looking through old writing samples. There was a feature that I had written when I was in college, and it had like some sci-fi fantasy undertones. And I thought, okay, I'm going to pull an all-nighter. I'm going to adapt this into a pilot for a TV show, and I'm going to make it much darker because I know that's the tone that Brandon really responds to. So I went ahead, did this overnight. I have no idea how it ended up like passing whatever test, but he read it. He was like, this is great. Sent it to the people over at Fox on the executive side, had a meeting with them. They were like, cool, we're on board
So
with
cool.
you. Yeah, and I ended up meeting, I had then a formal meeting with him and Adam Simon, who also created the show. And I came in like guns blazing. I was like, here's all my ideas for season 3. And I think maybe like 1 out of the 30 things I pitched ended up, making the show. But I was so excited about it and had so many thoughts, and I ended up getting hired. But it is, to date, the only live action drama that I've written on. Most of my credits have been in the animated comedy space, but it was such a blast, such an amazing group of people. And if it hadn't been canceled, I'd probably be a drama writer now. So
I think that's amazing. I've always found writing to be fascinating, whether it's from the perspective of a novel writer. Like I've had a few authors on the show, and then I've never got to talk to somebody about writing episodes of especially animation. I think is fascinating. I feel like that would be almost way more challenging because you're not, I don't know, you're working with storyboards more than actors or I don't know if that's correct at all. I'm asking, I guess, is it is it different because you're not working directly, you're working with voice actors and storyboards versus, live actors and sets, and is there a difference there when it comes to writing? And
Yeah, it's definitely different, but I would argue in some ways it's easier because the sky's the limit. I mean, there's no, in terms of budget, like really you could do
oh
anything.
right, yeah, you can
And
do anything. Yeah,
yeah, it's like the animation style is more what limits everything in terms of budget, but depending upon what style you're going for, who's drawing it, and what the options are there, it's really like you could
you
set
can make it as abstract as you want. That just
exactly right.
crazy. Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, and in
I didn't think
terms
of it like
of
that.
right, and in terms of actors, you don't have to worry that, oh, like so and so, this cast member is married to another cast member, so we can't kill off that character because then that one's going to quit. And like, you don't have to
Right.
worry about personalities. And there's also the deadlines are a little bit different. I mean, you're not having to shoot something on a set and rewriting on the spot. It's definitely there's things that are more challenging about it for sure, but I just love the freedom that comes along with animation.
Now,
that's awesome. I
you've
wouldn't have thought
written
it like that. I thought of it like that.
you've written for adult animation and for kids, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So which do you prefer? Do you like writing for kids or do you like writing for adults?
I prefer writing for adults.
What's funny is my lifelong aspiration is, like, what is it, the show Caillou or whatever it is? All my friends are, Caillou. They're always like, this is the most annoying cartoon I've ever seen, but my kids love it. Yep. And I'm like, my aspiration is to be the voice actor of the most annoying cartoon ever that all my friends' kids love. So it's awesome. Like the biggest like troll thing ever I could do. So it's funny that you say adults, because I'm all about like, writing for kids.
I mean, as a voice actor, it might be more fun voicing characters for kids, in that regard. You can haunt all your friends' living rooms. But in terms of the writing, and that's not to say, like, I have a lot of friends who specifically like prefer writing in the children's animated space, and it's wonderful for so many reasons. And when I have my own family one day, maybe I'll change my mind, because it'd be super cool if my kid's watching a show that I'm contributing to. Mm-hmm. But just right now, creatively, and the way my mind works, I just prefer the way you break stories for adults. And it depends what age range you're writing for too. What I learned working in the kids space is, you think sometimes like, oh, it doesn't really matter, whether they're 4, whether they're 8, you're kind of telling the same stories. But I remember we had someone on the kids show we worked on, we were wanting to meet with like the merchandising department. The creators of the show had like toys and certain things in mind that they wanted to create, and they wanted the writers to create stories and props and things like that would market well. So we met with a marketing team, and they were talking to us. I'm going to butcher some of this, I apologize, but they were saying kids at like a very, very young age, they're looking to see characters who are like themselves. And
they can relate to.
Yeah, that they can relate to. But as they start to get older, they gravitate more toward the aspirational, like, oh, I could fly one day, like, like that kind of thing. Just certain things that they find cool then, that when they're younger, it's not as reflective. And so there's definitely like really cool nuances to writing for children and knowing how their minds work. And it requires a certain skill set. But just in terms of my background and the way my mind works, I just find it more stimulating to write for adults. But I can absolutely see that changing.
When you combine those two, actually, what you're saying, about children, and the characters and how they connect to the characters, it's totally, my son's 10, and he very much earlier on and now still connects to the characters. But the more the characters are having to persevere through something, like characters, for example, I let him watch It, and that was a big struggle for me. But his friends had watched it, and it was just like, all right, I gave in. And that was tough because I'm a big Stephen King fan. Like, I'm a diehard Stephen King fan. And I knew that it was going to be, I watched the second one with him. I didn't see it before I watched it with him, which was something I don't usually do ever. I'm kind of a helicopter parent in a lot of ways. But aside from that, I definitely see him connecting to the characters that he can relate to, but the characters he can relate to that can also do amazing things, right? So the combination of those two things, it's just like a powerhouse for kids his age, because it's like right in that sweet spot where they've still got the nostalgia of like the relation to the character, but then also the newer, the part of them is part of me that's still drawn to characters like the Avengers and comic book characters. And anyway, it popped in my head, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
That there's actually a science behind it, really.
Really, I did not even think about that. I mean, it's probably the same idea as sales, right? Like sales psychology, and the whole human brain works a certain way and connects to certain things, relates to empathy and yeah, that's part of the reason why I don't sell things anymore. I hated it. I hated that whole sales psychology manipulation thing. And I mean, I found a way around it because,
well,
I
that's
guess what
you
I was
have
going to
to
say earlier, I didn't want to go on a tangent, and I totally knew I was going to do it. But about writing what you love. I mean, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, and I was in a metal band for 4 years and did some of the biggest things I've ever done, probably will ever do as a musician. And I love those parts of my life. I will never forget them, but I'm happier doing what I do now, writing 4-chord alternative songs. I'm just happier doing it, and I will choose to continue to do that because that's what I need to get out, all the music, the creation, even if it's simple. I need that type of, it's what sets me on fire, and I think that's the thing that I guess I was relating to is like, if you'd rather be writing one, drama over animation, that it's almost imperative that you do that, because the best version of yourself is going to come out of that, because it's what makes you happy or what you really love to do. And even if it's not, like I was saying with appliances, like I enjoyed it enough to do it, that I got by and could look past I found ways around the whole, having to make sales, but also not, being a douchebag about sales. And I hated that job in a lot of ways, but I became a nerd, that was my connection to it. So it's like, I think that, when you can do that and you can find something that you do have a connection to, it's going to be a better, always choose that over the thing that you're not as thrilled about.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think, with some writers, you'll find people that are very, very passionate about writing dramas or horror or thriller, like people that are passionate about comedy or the subgenres there. For me, what's always been a little bit different, and I'm definitely not alone in this, is my passion is less for a specific genre and more just for stories and for characters. And I think that's why I love matchmaking. Like, I just love people and figuring out how their mind works, what makes them tick, what they're into, and putting that into characters. And I think, people are always like, oh, you write TV and you do matchmaking. Those are so unrelated. But at the core of it, it's not to call people characters, because they're human beings, but
art imitates life. Right.
Exactly. And so for me, that's the passion. And so I've been fortunate to have opportunities to write a lot in the animated comedy space, and that's been wonderful. And had the opportunity to write on that live action drama, which has been great. I don't have a preference for one or the other. Like, as long as I'm getting to tell cool stories about characters that I'm really into, that's more what the passion is for me.
That's awesome.
So I specifically went and watched the episode of Family Guy that you wrote. It was
Oh.
Fighting Irish, right?
Yeah.
Really?
So
I didn't know that I'm finding this out right now. I love that episode, actually. That's
So-
because
Oh, cool.
I've been watching that show since
it's
oh my
Inception,
God.
basically.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
fun
definitely.
fact: class of 2004, Somersworth, New Hampshire. For our superlatives, Family Guy was voted as the favorite TV show. That was our class TV show.
Of course, it was
Oh,
very
that's cool.
time
Yeah.
relative.
Yeah. So my absolute favorite part of that show was when you had the flashback with Liam Neeson, where like I think he just goes and he's just being aggressive or whatever, and Peter's like, usually these flashbacks are funny, and he's just like basically like I don't fuck around is what it came down to. And I laughed so hard at that. I was like,
Oh,
this
that's
is
good.
perfect. Like, so how did you come about with this episode? Like, do they give you like, okay, this is what we want the episodes to be, these are the characters who are going to be in it? Do you choose that, or do they tell
Do they
you
give
this is what?
guidelines?
Do they tell
Yeah.
you this is where we want you to be?
Sure. So fun fact, the episode was originally entitled Kicking Arse.
Oh,
And,
Ah.
we were told we couldn't use arse because children might see it on the screen. And so we had to change it. I didn't love Fighting Irish. I sent like 20 alts for different titles, and Fighting Irish was on there. And they were like, let's go with this one. I was like, darn it.
You're like, no. No.
But yeah, in terms of the process, so typically what happens, and every show is different. For Family Guy specifically, at the beginning of every season, the whole staff will get together. It used to be at Seth's house, and everyone would just come in with like 20 ideas for episodes, and everyone would just take turns pitching what they want to see that season. And then Seth would choose, like, if there's 22 episodes that season, he would choose his favorite of everything. And it's like, okay, these are what the episodes are going to be. But if you pitch an episode, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the writer who gets to write that episode. So the showrunners will figure out, how they want to assign that accordingly. And sometimes you get to write something you pitch, sometimes you don't. But at the end of the day, it's a very, very collaborative process. So for me, I was still Seth's assistant at the time. I was very lucky in that I got tapped to, I don't know how much you know about freelance episodes in television.
I know a little bit
nothing.
because I happen to have been doing some freelance stuff, like just in general, and writing some of my own stuff. So I kind of have a general idea.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I can explain it, I guess, for those out there who don't know as much about
Definitely
it.
for the listeners, for sure. I was like, I definitely need to know too. I'm with them.
This applies more for broadcast television. So not really like cable streaming shows, but broadcast TV where you see shows that have like 20, 22 episodes a season. The Writers Guild
like ER.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So the Writers Guild has a mandate that it was supposed to, not even supposed to, it does really promote new blood in the industry and gives fresh writers a chance to sort of come out the gate and work on their craft, instead of keeping the industry so insular.
Like
so,
ER. That was a good example.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Quentin Tarantino directed a couple of episodes way back.
I think
sorry, just random info.
Yeah. No. So yeah, 1 or 2 episodes of those kinds of shows a season, including Family Guy, are meant to go to freelance writers. So someone who's not regularly staffed. So like 20 of the episodes will be written by full staff members. And then 1 or 2 of the episodes will sort of get outsourced to promote new blood, new ideas. And so every show does it a little differently. You might have some shows where the creator's cousins are going to write it every season. Like it's not necessarily, it can be nepotistic, like it really varies. A lot of shows though, they'll give it to like the showrunner's assistant or a writer's assistant who's in the room typing notes and such. So at the time, and it's not a guarantee, but it was something that I really, really wanted while I was working as Seth's assistant. And fortunately, like they read my writing samples. I had worked with him for 5 years before I got this opportunity. So it's definitely like not something that anyone is guaranteed. But I was lucky enough after, some time with him that I was considered, I was chosen. But the freelance writers are not a part of the beginning of the season where everyone's pitching different ideas. So when I got hired to write this one episode, the episode idea already existed and I was assigned to it. So it actually started off where the entire episode, it was the same premise, but it was Bruce Willis who was everyone thought would star in it.
Oh,
really? That's great. Oh boy.
I'm really, really happy that it worked out differently. I mean, we had some really funny ideas for Bruce Willis, but he ended up not wanting to play himself, which you'll see a lot on these kinds of shows. Like people don't like, they want to play some like zany character. They don't really want to make fun of themselves or see themselves portrayed on screen. So a lot of times you'll see celebrities on shows like South Park or Family Guy, and a writer or someone else will come in and voice that person. You'll have like a sound alike. So he did not, he was like very adamant, did not want to do this episode. And maybe it was a scheduling conflict. Honestly, I don't remember the details. I just remember he essentially declined. And so we started brainstorming, and I got to be a part of this, started brainstorming about who we think we could replace, who would say yes, who would be excited about, what would generate story. And we ended up landing on Liam Neeson. He was super cool about it, and wanted to record the episode. And I feel like there was, I really should know this offhand. There was one thing he said he didn't want us to touch on, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it was something really random and funny. Like, I think we had said at the time, there was a line where he's like, I've been a world famous tough guy since I was 71. It was something like that. And he was like, actually, guys, it was 72. And most of the times, like you give, and I'm butchering the age, it was something else, but it was along those lines. Most of the time you give, like you'll have an actor read a script that's like totally just making fun of them, and they'll give you like a ton of notes and they don't want you to touch on this or that. And that was like his only thing, was like, I was this age, not that age when I started doing those movies. So he was so awesome. And in terms of breaking the story, so when people come up at the beginning of the season with ideas for episodes, it's just a premise. It's like, what if Peter, has to fight, Liam Neeson, whatever it is. Like it's a very like simple idea. Sometimes there's like other story beats that are pitched, but it's usually just like one big idea, and then the rest is decided later. So in terms of what I was a part of and what any writer doing their episode would be a part of, you're breaking the story. So you're coming up with like the A story, which is the main storyline, the B story, which is, what a minor character is doing like on their own tangent. And then you're having to sort of marry the two together, and you come up with the overarching, like, what do these story arcs look like? And we have a whiteboard, and we'll write down like different scenes. Some writers' rooms you'll see like cardboard or cardboards where people are like taking tacks and putting index cards about. I happen to like those more because you can just sort of rearrange things. We did that on Salem, like, like let's move this scene to act 2. When you're doing a whiteboard, you're having to like erase and then write it somewhere else, and it can be messy. But that's how we do it on Family Guy. And so you come up with like what's in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 for both the A and the B stories. And then after you do the story breaking, like the broad strokes, they'll send the writer to do an outline, and you basically flesh out what each of those scenes is going to look like. You have 2 days to do that. You come back, they approve it, maybe they have some notes, and then you go to Gag Rooms. So this is something that's very, very specific for Family Guy. I've never worked on another show that does this, but Family Guy, it's been on for so many years. Most writers' rooms I've been in have like 7, 8 writers. Family Guy has like 25.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, it's like like not everyone can even fit around the same table in the conference room. And so when we're breaking story, everybody's in there. But when we're coming up with jokes, we break into smaller rooms that they call Gag Rooms. And so I got thrown into a gag room for my episode with like 4 or 5 other writers. And you literally just spend like a couple days going through the outline sequentially and pitching any funny thing you can think of for the characters or the situation in those scenes. So by the time you get through with this whole process, it's been so collaborative that I had every writer is given 2 weeks to write your episode. I've been on shows where you have 2 days, but Family Guy, you have 2 weeks. And some people will like fly to Thailand or Hawaii and write their episode, and I just stayed home. More comfortable than my own couch.
Yeah.
And with all of the stuff that you're armed with, you go ahead and you write your episode. And some people, they want to make sure that they're giving all the writers the credit they deserve and like throwing in as many jokes as possible. Other writers want the story to feel fresh to people when they read it, so they don't want to put in jokes that people have heard before. So you'll see a mix usually of jokes that had been pitched already and jokes that writer will come up with during that 2-week period. So there's like enough new content in there to excite people. And then you turn it in, and then you workshop it in the room, and then you do a table read. So a table read is where the actors come in and they sit around the table, and everyone reads the script out loud. And it was always really important for Seth that the room be full of employees and friends and family, because with comedy, when you're reading something out loud, if no one's there, you can't really tell, like, is this funny or is it not funny? You want people there to laugh.
How does it hit the room?
Yeah.
Exactly. So go ahead.
That's wicked cool.
Well, I was gonna say, so how did you become Seth MacFarlane's assistant exactly? Like, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, so that is a story. So when I graduated USC, I had always thought up until my last year that I wanted to write features, and hadn't even really been exposed to TV writing until my last year. And so I graduated in 2008. So it was like kind of on the cusp of when TV was starting to become more popular. Like, I don't know if any listeners out there even remember the time where TV wasn't that big of a deal. Like, it used to be all about going to the movies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so TV, like, it's turned into such a cool, amazing place to be. But at the time in school, everybody wanted to write movies. And so it wasn't until my last year when I took some TV writing classes that I was like, actually, I think this is what I want to do. But all of my internships and all the connections I had been making were working toward having a career on the movie side of the industry. So I didn't know anyone, but I knew, like, you know, speaking about passions, Mark, like, I knew I wanted to break into TV. And so I thought, screw it. Like, I know I don't know anyone. I'm going to make myself know people. How do I do that? And, you know, this is back in the day, right? This is back in the day before, like, Jess, you contacted me on Instagram.
Yeah.
People hearing that now are like, that makes sense. Like, that's what people do these days. Back when I was graduating in 2008, social media wasn't really used for that purpose. And that's not to say I was the first one ever to do this. I was definitely not. But I went ahead and I looked up every single comedy and drama scripted that was in production at the time in 2008. And I cross-referenced the cast and crew on IMDb with Facebook. And this was before privacy settings were different, when you could literally just message anybody. And I contacted every single person that I could confirm was that same person from that show. And I was like, well, hey, my name's Jaydi. Like, I was a screenwriting major. I really want to work in TV. I will do anything for your show. I will write. I will make coffee. Like, I didn't really know much about how the industry worked back then. But I had some amazing responses. I had, like, Lynn Mamet, David Mamet's wife, was like, she was amazing. She was like, run. Like, if there's anything else you want to do in life but write TV, go do that. Stay away from our industry. It's terrible. Like, I had some really fun messages like that too. I looked through the other day just because I had so many people I was corresponding with that I was like, I wonder if any of these people have become like someone bigger than when I messaged them in 2008. And I saw, like, Kenya Barris was someone I corresponded with who told me to send me his resume or my resume. He went on to obviously create, like, Blackish and Grownish and Mixish, and, like, he's Black AF on Netflix. Like, he's amazing. But back then he was like, I don't know if he was an assistant or a baby writer. So it's just been really interesting to see, like, the creator of Vampire Diaries. Yeah. But I did get 2 interviews from this, right? So as nice as people were, it didn't result in a lot of leads, but I did get 2 interviews. One was with This is a really long answer to your question, so I'm so
You're
sorry.
fine. I like
No,
this.
no,
This is perfect.
This is great. Yeah, because this is the networking. Is it you got yourself to that point. You worked your way,
Yeah.
and I'll let you go because this is fascinating. But it's just
No,
very
no,
very relatable. Just
cool.
past job I had with Samsung, and anything music related. Just so continue. I want to hear more of your story.
Very cool. So yeah, so I'm skipping over some things like how I faxed my resume to like 96 different shows. Who faxes anymore, right? But so I got 2 interviews. One was the last season of According to Jim to be the showrunner's assistant. And that was like a very roundabout thing where I had contacted a writer and he knew of an opening for someone else. And then the other interview I got was to be a production assistant on Family Guy. And for those who don't know, a PA is like the most entry-level job on a show. You're like the bitch of the show, basically. I hope it's okay to say that. I don't know.
No, you can say fuck if you want
say
to.
Whatever you want.
You're the show's bitch. You basically like anything that anyone needs, whether it's making coffee or flipping over those like huge water coolers to replace the jug, or going on runs, like driving something somewhere, picking up food for people, stocking the fridges. It goes on. I was like, great, I'll interview for that too. So I, given the choice, looking back, my career might have been very different if I chose the last season of According to Jim. It was definitely a better position, but I feel like all the guys I liked at the time were into Family Guy. And I was like, oh, I'll be so cool if I get a job on Family Guy. So I went ahead and I accepted the offer to be a PA. And then just speeding all that up, right? The freelance scripts that I told you about, historically, I came to learn that most of them would either go to Seth's assistant or the writer's assistant, who's the person in the room, constantly like typing notes and everything to be a part of the show. And so for me, I was more excited about the prospect of trying to like rise up to become his assistant, because I felt like there's so much I could learn from him. He has other projects too. It would be really cool to work so closely with someone so brilliant. So for me, I was sort of gunning for that role. And I became the production coordinator next, which is different on different shows. But for Family Guy, you're basically the head PA. You just oversee the PAs and you delegate responsibilities. And then finally, Seth's assistant, he has 2, or had 2 at the time. Now I think he has 3 or 4. But the 2 on the show, one got promoted to writer. So the second assistant became the first assistant. And suddenly there was an opening. I was so excited. People knew that that's what I wanted. And I heard it was actually going to a coworker of mine. So bummed. And he's a great guy, like I'm sure he would have been great. But I was so bummed. Like I had turned down other positions. Like there was someone else was like, oh, like this writer needs an assistant. I was like, no, thank you. I'm waiting for Seth. So, I'm sure I burned some bridges there. And I was like, great. Well, it's going to be probably years before his assistant desk opens again. Maybe I should just go somewhere else. And I thought, all right, I'm going to try one last ditch effort. If I get fired for this, who cares? Because I'm probably going to quit anyway, because there's no room for growth for me. Like that's the only job I wanted. And so I wrote Seth a letter, and it was basically like, don't even know if you know who I am, but I've been working on your show for X amount of time, and I really want to be your assistant. Here's my background. Here's why I think I would crush it. And I waited until he was alone in the kitchen one day, and I was like, hi. And I like handed him a letter.
Like awkwardly handed it.
Totally awkward, like over by the water cooler. And I was like, I forget what I said. Honestly, like I think my mind just went blank, but I handed him the letter. And I actually suddenly, even though the rumor was like this job was going to this guy, all of a sudden I was in the running and I got an interview. So that's how I ended up getting the job. And it turned out that as amazing as the assistants were before me, they were like the nicest, friendliest guys. And anyone who wanted a meeting with Seth, like they were really cool about giving people access. And he was like, this girl's aggressive. She's gonna like protect me and make sure, like I had no problems being this like stone wall that would just
Were you an ice queen?
I was totally an ice queen.
Yeah, ice queens unite. Yeah.
I think like even seeing me on this podcast, if people are watching it, seeing me like animated and smiling, like that was not me as an assistant. I was like badass bitch, totally like stone faced and really like aggressive about what I wanted. And I think he saw that in me and was like, that's what I need for that job. Like I just need someone to say no a lot on my behalf. And I was like, great, I'm your gal, you know?
Well,
and so
that's commitment. That's somebody that's very driven towards the same goal as him. Obviously, it's an assistant position, so your goals obviously align. As long as they do, and you're really driven, there's nobody else better for that job than somebody who really, really wants it and is really going to do everything they can to make the
And take it
outcome
seriously.
120%. You know, I think that's fascinatingly, just kind of, it's brilliant in a lot of ways because a lot of people don't realize it is very much your willingness to keep on pushing for something no matter what. If you have, there's no other option. And that was gonna be my question for you, and I didn't mean to interrupt again. Do you feel like, you know, in that process, when you know that this is going to be the thing that you're going for, so and I'm not saying this for you, I'm just saying this hypothetically, maybe from a personal perspective, that this is the thing, you're going to get it, and there's no other way. It's not even in your control. It's just going to happen. That there's no other way. And although you're going to put everything you are into it because you're afraid of it not happening, in the back of your head, you just kind of know that there is nobody else better for that than you, and you're going to get it. Is that relative? Can you relate to that? Is that sound
I mean, that
similar?
was definitely my mentality. I really felt like, okay, like if I push for something hard enough and I know that I can get it, you know, that's within my capabilities. That being said, you know, it's interesting. TV is such a social medium, and in some ways, like as amazing as the story is, I don't know. Like you know, you look back and you're like, okay, I got what I wanted. I also got to write an episode. These were all amazing things. And I was very like driven and pushed for these things. And especially being a woman in the animated comedy side of the industry, it's like, it is so important you be that. Yet at the same time, you look at like the guys who come before you who are just like the nicest, most social people and everyone loves them. And it's like, that's who you want to be in a room with, right? If you're a writer, like that's who you want to spend the day with. It's not the like stone cold bitch who's saying no to you all the time. So, you know, on one hand, it was great because I got the things that I was gunning for. But at the same time, like, was I the most liked person on the show as a result? Probably not. And, you know, who's to say whether that's good or bad for my career? I got to do the things that I set out to do. And I'm doing other things now, you know, that came from that experience. But I don't know. Like, I think you can look at what I did and say, like, that's amazing and everyone should go that route. But I also think, like, TV is such a unique thing that half of it is talent and drive, and half of it is just, like, who do you like hanging out with? And I think I put less of an emphasis on that when I was younger. Now I'm like, okay, great. Like, I just want to have fun and get along with people. And then in doing so, they'll see how talented, you know, I am and want to work with me for that reason. But I lead more with that. And I think it used to be the reverse for me. And if I could tell my younger self anything, it might be, but who knows? Like if I hadn't been as pushy, maybe I wouldn't have had those opportunities. So like hindsight's 2020, but also, you know, who knows?
Well, what made you leave being Seth MacFarlane's assistant?
I got the opportunity to write on Salem.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. And sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to interrupt on you.
No. I have it. No, I don't. But it'll be back. I'll remember. It's one of those things that like it sometimes it just stays there, and then other times it just disappears. No, that wasn't it.
It's ADHD.
Mhm.
ADHD. So I do want to ask you one other question so I think we're probably about time where we need to wrap up here. I know that you have an appointment that you need to go to as well. But What does your husband do for work?
Yeah, it's a great question too. So Dave is on the unscripted side of the industry. He is currently the head of development for a company called John Irwin Entertainment. Previously was the head of development for a company called Shed over at Warner Brothers. He essentially creates reality shows and then goes and sells them on behalf of whatever company he's working for. So I don't know how much I could say about what he has in the works right now, but
don't. We know how NDAs work.
Yeah, I think I could say he just sold a straight to series to NBC. I won't get too detailed, but like he's so prolific in that regard. I get so jealous. Like I feel like almost everything he pitches, like at least half of it sells, and I'm just so envious because I could work on something for like years and I finally get the opportunity to pitch it and it's like, nope, and I just, I'm so in awe of his ability, but it's kind of cool because he's a writer, like in the same sense I am. It's just the way that his brain works, like he is creating material. But the unscripted side of the industry is a totally different beast. And I could talk on and on about my thoughts with unscripted because I think it needs a lot of changes, but no, he creates reality shows and he sells them, but unscripted, it could be anything from like a game show to a docu-series. Like it's very, very broad and he's kind of done it all.
That's super cool. I've always wanted to see an unscripted series on like, I don't know if you remember, there was a series, Face Off. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to see something like that with voiceover for animated series. I thought that would be kind of cool to like have voice actors who are competing for these. Because they used to do that. They used to have that on the Food Channel network where they would have people compete to become the next Food Channel host. And so I kind of thought that'd be kind of cool to do for like voice actors for animation.
I love that. I will mention it to him.
Yeah, I don't want credit for it at all. I don't care. I don't have the connections, but if he could ever get that done, I would just love to see it.
Yeah, I feel like almost everything I pitch to him, he's so familiar with the landscape out there and what's been done. Yeah. I feel like everything I pitch to him, he's like, oh yeah, there was a show like that in 2007, or oh, like this other company is pitching that show right now. I'll totally mention it to him, and if it becomes a show, then you're gonna have to be on it. Just saying.
Yeah, I just want to be the host. I just want to host it. I don't want to compete. I just want to host.
I love it.
You do have that very effective radio voice, Jess. Yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
You do have it's very I don't know, because it's not like it's ASMR obviously, but it's that comforting.
I've done that,
I was gonna say I could see you doing an ASMR thing because it's such a very comfortable, natural. I not to say it sounds like commercial voice, but you could do a commercial voice very well. I'm sure you have, right?
Yes. Lots and lots of times.
Right.
But
I real quick, just before I forget, and because it's scribbled and I might forget what it actually says.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
With for your husband, that same question I asked you about the manifest destiny kind of thing, but like just that kind of tunnel vision. There's no other option other than, especially because he's successful. It's always a good question for people that are successful, only because the things that I have had success in my life are all things that were just like, to me, they were just rooted in whatever destiny I have as a human being. And of course I want them to work out a certain way. We all have attachments to things, but I'm just always curious, people that have successful stories, and especially like yours, being able to network that way is really, really relatable. Not in the aspect that I've done anything as comparable, other than if you consider Samsung job. But I worked for Samsung for a while, and that was something that I had to really network, and it was in appliances. It was like, oh my God, this is gonna be my dream job. At the time, being married, having a kid, having a job that I didn't hate, and that I can make my own schedule and stuff is awesome. And I just felt like I was just determined to get that position, and it was new to me at that time. And then since then, I've experienced that feeling a few more times. I'm just trying to see if there's any type of like correlation. I guess I'm trying to get too scientific with it, but just asking other people, hey, what's your experience with this? You've had success. Did you get any type of like gut intuition or anything like that? So that'd be just a question I'd be interested to hear what his response would be, if it ever comes
Whether or
up.
not this was something he set out to do.
Or no, or just that like it just
he just knew,
because
like,
he's
was
successful.
it like this
It's just like, yeah,
feeling?
it's just what happens. I'm just awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that, but like, I think that when you have that positivity that also comes with that, the same way it would come for me, it's just like a weird, almost like it feels like a weird phenomena that I don't necessarily, I love making music and stuff. And I'm not, I don't know if I don't know whether it's great or not. I think it's okay. But at the same time, I feel like it's just
It's just what you do.
It's just what, there you go.
Is that how
given.
your husband is? Is that just what he knew he needed to do?
Right. Yeah. Is it something that's just like, I guess, ingrained in certain people to be successful? And
Sure.
not to put the pressure on, but
no,
you guys
not at all.
have done some pretty awesome stuff. So, oh, geez, that's not fun. Sorry, folks.
No, you're good. So
my alarm
yeah,
went off.
he's a natural storyteller, creator, idea generator kind of guy.
Sounds like it.
So yeah, I don't know that he always knew like this is how it would manifest, but it's definitely why he's successful doing this, and he's certainly passionate about it. And
that's awesome.
The cool thing with creating unscripted content is any new passion you have, anything that interests you, you could create a show around that. And so he's also like constantly exploring new passions through what he does. But yeah, I think he always knew he had it in him to like create, to tell stories. And you could do a whole podcast with him, just to hear how he came to be where he's at now. But certainly he definitely knew, I think, that he was going to tell stories in some medium one way or the other.
That I think that's awesome. Like I mean, if he ever is interested in coming on the show, love to have him on the show. I love
absolutely.
Just talking to anybody. I mean, for me, it's the, it's
we're looking for connections.
Each person has a different experience, and it's just always fascinating to talk to people about really anything, but specifically this. I'm not, and what's interesting is I've always kind of had an interest in the industry from an acting perspective. I always kind of wanted to pursue. Actually, it's funny, voice acting. That's why I have a strong appreciation for what you do, because I think it's really amazing, being able to alter characters in such a way, and especially stuff with commercials and stuff.
Yeah, but just so you know, a lot of the work comes from the writers.
Yeah, no, I know, but you really still have to. It's pressure. You gotta get it right, and you gotta get the the words right and everything. And that can be challenging, just even as a singer, So
we both have great voices for it. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's actually really means a lot to me.
Yeah,
I'm aspiring now.
Yeah. So I just want to say, in wrapping up, because I know, like you said earlier, you had another appointment you had to get to. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. And if anybody is looking to have a consultation for matchmaking, because obviously around here we can't exactly, we don't really have a pool around here. But I think having a consultation is helpful to be able to help people determine what it is they're looking for, and to be able to, navigate the waters.
We do have listeners in LA. Am I correct? I'm sorry if I
Yeah, no, LA,
completely
yeah.
forgot. Okay, cool.
Matchmaking is LA, but I do date and relationship coaching for anyone. So that's not LA specific.
All right.
And so where can they reach you at once again, just so that way if anybody's interested, they can contact you?
Yeah, for sure. So again, matchmaking is referral only, but in terms of the date and relationship coaching, for $150, I do 2 half-hour sessions to talk about exactly what you just described. We do kind of like a deep dive into your history, your present, you know, where you're at now, whether it's online dating or otherwise. And we identify areas where you can make subtle adjustments to improve your dating life in all different capacities. And so, yeah, if you're interested in that, you could check out my website, ljmatchmaking.com, or you could email me at matchmakinglj@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I cannot wait to see all the other things that you write for. And maybe one day I will be cast in something that you've written and I could be one of your voice actors someday. We'll see.
Yeah, I would love to work together on something one day. And so we'll see where I land next. And let's definitely stay in touch. And thank you both so much for having me on.
Thank you. It'd be great to have you back. And if you get a chance to, talk to your husband, if he's up for coming on, we'd love to have him on. It's great.
We can have both of you on at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, be warned, he is a talker. So the 2-hour podcast might be a 5-hour one, but no, he's really
we're okay with that.
We've done those before. Well, I think it was like 3.5 hours is the record, but that was a while ago. That was before we had video. It's a little bit different with Zoom. In person was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, back before the masks.
And so for all the listeners out there, abstract here, abstract there.
Abstract Transmissions.